60. In 1915, American General Billy Mitchell said to his bomber pilots words to the effect and intention of, "Go dump thousands of bombs, not on the front line invading soldiers, but far away on their central cities' women and children." Why just weaken an army and government to surrender when we've got bombs enough to murder and ruin 100 times more civilians than wreck their entire life support and structure for a generation too? Should not our war, like our ambition and hate, be total, infinite, and forever? Then during the next single century, just 1% as long as the patriarch's 10 millennia billion slaughtered warfest, close to a third of that billion was torn apart by the new high-tech war on everybody, not just soldiers, arms business. The 5 million times more explosive than TNT nuclear arsenals, 80 billion kill capacity we've fully discussed, condemned, and legally planned against. And as conventional explosives' death toll has been close to 1,000 times the nuclear, you and I must scheme the treaty and national laws to fully outlaw every weapon and army capable of world invasion, never defense. In the last 75 years, the giant civilian bomber militaries and businesses of America and Russia, plus dozens of mere mid-level Holocaust governments, fueled by hundreds of world supplying 1,000% free to grow, or shall we say boom, explosives and their delivery systems companies, have driven hundreds of often decades-long wars of aggressive invasion and hate, causing that many defensive counterattacks with smaller, shorter-range, cheaper weapons to feed all the more businesses exploding universal human tragedy. Russia, for decades, has continued to conduct total terror bombing, civilian savaging against breakaway republics or potential empire-building conquests. Syria's Assad will soon achieve the nail-bombing slaughter of 1 million of his own countrymen, with the outrageous audacity to resist his benevolent rule. Until Gaza, Saudi Arabia's decade of battering Yemen back to the Stone Age with American bombs to crush Houthi rebels against the Crown Prince's pet neighbor government while hated Iran arms the revolt, was the world's worst total war theater until Sudan's 20 militia, 20 nation fueling savagery recently takes first prize. Will the Saudi-American Yemen agriculture and economy wrecking, pounding starve everyone until the rebels are too weak to pick up rifles and pull triggers? No, the last food and gasoline for their 50 caliber machine gun pickup trucks and soldiers will always be commandeered by warriors inflamed another 30 years by the relentless foreign bombers' savagery against their women and children. This nasty little history, also the world's identical brief future, driving certain doomsday unless you learned from and stop it, is the prelude to my last night's NPR interview with CARE International's West Bank and Gaza director, Haba Tibi. In the history of our help in war zones, she informed us, we have never encountered such totally devastating death, suffering, and hyperspeed escalation of near-future mortal total population danger across an attacked, invaded area. As I convey Ms. Tibby's Gaza report, please understand that virtually all elements of her Hell on Earth report describe most all total war arenas since General Mitchell tipped and entreated the world weapons businesses in 1915 that leaders had forever learned how to empty treasuries for arsenals monstrous enough to ruin, torture, and slaughter hundreds of nations of civilians, border to border. So keep the shit coming, boys. We must be equally appalled by the Hamas slaughter of children at a concert and hundreds of kibbutz private families in a single day. Although Israeli murder of hundreds of Palestinian civilians every day for 6 months appears to be just getting started. Probably 10,000 more than the 35,000 bombed Palestinian corpses counted are still rotting under tens of thousands of tons of smashed concrete, said Ms. Tibby. Terrible diseases will emerge and spread from the decomposing bodies. Fuel withheld by the attackers, needed to desalinate and pump water today, brings multitudes down to their last drops of fresh water. Most filthy alternatives also disappearing. While sewer drainage without power fails, floods of watery excrement are flowing in front of family doors, historically killing populations with horrendous diseases, epidemic to all exposed to raw sewage. Besides total fuel cutoff, medical, food, and water aid, historically crucial to Gaza's survival, is deliberately held to under 4% of need, trickling through a single South Gaza gate from Egypt. All other borders 100% shut by the attackers' life support siege. A major fraction of North Gaza's and virtually all of Gaza City's apartment buildings are smashed flat. This will continue unabated, promise IDF spokesmen, because despite hundreds of thousands unable to follow escape orders due to disability and relentless bombing, many more civilians must die because Hamas hides among and beneath them. Just why we ruined 17 hospitals. Israeli answers to journalist questions, not mine. For months now, the one remaining hospital watches thousands die from zero supplies, non-care, not unsurvivable or unrecoverable with medical help, injuries. Survivors huddled without heat, light, food, or water. Over 100 to each remaining standing room only apartment. Heat and lightless as winter moves in. All stand in long lines for a bite of food, sip of water, use of a toilet, or a 1 by 5 foot bit of floor to sleep on. When post-war borders finally partially open, hundreds of thousands of close to dying refugees will be herded out to squalid camps. Like all Palestinian and other war refugees all over the world, decades more savagery will ensure that they will never return to their homes or have any lives to control it all before they hopelessly die. Why? Because bombs taxpayers pay profiteers for rule our hell on earth, all directly designed for violent murder and longer suffering of survivors until, without disarmament law fully enforced, humanity end, possibly all life extinction. Nearly all of humanity's current 67 million refugees must come to their sad, horrific conditions lost end for 3 reasons. 1, Rule of Murder Incorporated that only crazy, lonely Steve demands that you end. 2. Many wars' purposes are actual land theft and ethnic and religious cleansing, paranoid bigots, scorched earth and people campaigns, and 3. Global warming's accelerating drought wrecking of farms and economies across 6 continents, driving out a high fraction of refugees. The remainder tortured by armed-to-the-teeth government, non-government, and or drug cartel militias. Everyone's one rescue is proven none other than who? You. Immediately after the October 7th, 2023 Hamas kibbutz slaughter, settlers and further land grabbers have escalated their murdering or driving out of a number of Palestinian villages against every law on earth, including Israeli national law, just continuously encouraged by the present hate-filled Netanyahu government. Just today, the world learned that for a full year, massive intelligence has flowed into the Israeli government that Hamas was preparing a blitz invasion and slaughter of Israel bordering Gaza. But all evaluators presented even with direct reports of large mock invasion training camps decided that the oppressed, vengeful crazies were only enjoying aspirational dreams, but were otherwise totally impotent as an actual threat. Therefore, all Jewish settlements anywhere near Gaza were left entirely militarily undefended. Of course, explaining the final, unopposed rampage aloud. Israel then remained the $20 billion American dollar world champion invasion civilian savager, unable to train a few hundred rifles on hang gliders and motorcycles cross-border attacking. So what is the treaty I shriek at you to negotiate? Foreign invasion force ban allowing perfect border defenses only. Opposed only by arguments that the century of bombs that killed 300 million equal our only national security. I want you to live, so please don't die laughing. A relevant arms control point. Automatic assault rifles allowing one man to kill 50 fast need not be brandished by the modest defenders along every equally lightly defended border. Giant bomber nations call themselves superpowers, winners. Indeed, Russia and America finally crushed Germany and Japan to win World War II. But the big blasters ever since mostly battered adversaries into permanently escalating resistance, left most war theaters with our tails between our legs, drove our own economy's health and quality of life far below scores of saner nations, and enthroned corporate Murder Incorporated until doomsday. Does not all history reveal how militarized invader superpower empires end up? Losers. Indeed, your family's total loss too, unless you launch your ass off the couch. Winner. The true superpower of our only human future? You, baby. Ignore me as you choose, listeners, but to save your lives, devise and implement somebody's treaty and national laws to end the war machine bazaar, stop the bribery-buying, humanity-wrecking evil, and destroy the world-ending, not nation-defending, mega-weapons and mega-armies of mass destruction. Meaning every devil device that will kill 5 million or merely 50 in 30 seconds. Your campaign, however, will surely fail when it founders outside the thick, sick skulls of most billions long since propagandized to hatred of and war against every ethnic, national, and religious other. So include a treaty tenet to deliver and require humanity and peace curriculum for every public young and new adult classroom to learn face to foreign face the human beauty and truth of every other peaceful religion, race, and nationality. We'll all study the history of racist and religious bigotry driving war, the 16 Empire record of power-mad imperialists and weaponeers capturing governments and attempting world conquest, resulting in national defeat and suicide every single time, and our new world citizens' agenda, that peace and survival treaty. Just quickly and finally dead in the starting gate without every single student's public help. Publishers and foundations reject my mad mountain of words, but only for a far more worthy book, way academic and professional, promising to get our family-inspiring and saving job better done. Then again, have you noticed that I only write and yell because who the hell else has even started the job, only described and accomplished all or nothing by everybody, led by you? So get me out to spring the funds to condense ocean steam for 8 billion when regular rain, rivers, and lakes very soon disappear. Hey, excuse me for jerking away from my war story not quite finished. Gaza's murder was certainly not the counterattack to end a terrorist force. Remember that monster attackers would lose their world PR campaign just by admitting the truth. So monstrous lies are their 100% rule. Battering Hamas's homeland will, as always, multiply the rebels' fury, power, and potence another 70 years, proving the bombers' purpose only endless, profitable war. Exactly what ownership of hundreds of thousands of 2,000-pound TNT bombs impels. Obliteration of mass civilian life and permanent torture of the miserable, ruined survivors. Held in equal contempt are the bomber nation's own suffering, unrepresented citizens. Only benefiting, quite temporarily, are the 1% power-monger leaders, weapons dealers, and the far larger group hate propagandized to crave mass murder. Just Israel's, America's, Germany's, Japan's, and 10,000 war governments' 10,000-year story that only you can hugely progress towards ending in fewer years than you got fingers. Good thing, 'cause that's all the time we got. My little opinion? 10,000 historians tell of every great arsenal in his story built and used to savage multitudes of innocents for power, hate, and money, honey. Conventional war driving to nuclear, and drought increasing to your thirst death, exploding today on your TV. Not just Steve burning your ears. The only possible motives for destroying Gaza's people, instead of Israeli foot patrols directly ferreting out Hamas and their tunnel hostages, other than obvious giant civilian extermination for pure whole group hatred, are money and power flowing every day of our anti-civilization's last years to the war merchants and their political pawns. Today, I imagined you and I confronting Russian, American, and Israeli politicians with the questions: do not legislators' appropriations and executives' bill signatures for the missiles, bombers, and bombs for deployment, sales, or giveaway effectively seat these directors in the planes and aboard other flying missiles that will explode bombs on vast populations of 99% civilian non-combatants? And what about your money and votes given to leaders foursquare behind using genocide tools authorized and fueled by your bucks and ballots? Will you take responsibility for your big fat part? Might you possibly reverse empowerment of final humanity disaster when you feel like it? Maybe? If you've heard me, you're about to do your infinitely gigantic little part to end war by law. Not pretty please, somebody else take care of it if they wanna. Precisely our 10,000-year abandonment of every family, including yours. Now you're going to have to fix the whole world about to finally F you. Now, let me talk right to you war biz players. Because very few of you are hate-filled sadists, you fully block awareness of any and all flesh-rending machine triggers that other callous colleagues pull to achieve butchery of mostly non-combatants. Instead, you're conscious of only the weapons booming ever more billions and trillions in company profits, billions in campaign bribes, and decades more bought and paid for powerful, enriching terms in office. Your luscious, heady, professional, and family lives are compelling distractions from even 5-second visions of the genocide horror you buy and sell. While you send youthful others to battlefields thousands of miles away from your rich, happy, loving lives, infinitely more valuable than the noble cannon fodder persuaded or compelled to sacrifice theirs for you. Fulfillment they deserve far more than you, punks. Okay, back to all my well-meaning listeners with the question that each of you who mostly keep voting for leaders fully promising to spend your money for ever more of this terminal horror must ask of yourselves. If I do not today begin and never stop saying enough, stop by law, then aren't I the first worst vote, money, and ignorant apathy trigger of total world war soon to empty my water faucet, cupboard, and house window glass when that 500 miles an hour nuclear blast wave arrives? Only you, no one else, can reverse the lost players' chain reaction bestial descent from total war to total extinction. All I have to offer is full history and obsessive argument for straightforward, if not simple, human loving and protecting, not using, abusing, and killing ethics, laws, and actions. 1% me, 1,000% you. Get on it. I have a pretty good yen for historical deduction and draw from some important books, but most of these speeches wrote themselves after my 1,000 nights of insomnia chattering National Public Radio World Crisis News. You will need to monitor this best international education media to inform your problem-solving efforts. Alexander Putin biography. In 1941, Hitler invaded Russia. His huge army was finally halted at Leningrad, then driven all the way back to Berlin. 22 million Russians paid the ultimate price. One 1950s Leningrad child was Alexander Putin. He learned playground survival while every parent worked dawn to dusk for just food and rent money. The post-terrible war, unsupervised kids turned every parking and field lot hour into fighting primacy of the strongest, most aggressive, and ruthless. Vlad learned fast that any child who retreated from a single fist fight was permanently labeled a coward and punching bag. Gang advantage, he found, was gained by sucking up to and serving the most successful bully. With such war defense and power strategy, adult Putin shot to the top of the KGB, then maneuvered to the stratosphere, permanent Russian dictator. His entire life trains only for empire, murder, and $200 billion personal theft, won with his fear, insecurity, aggression, and retribution. The 20th century's worst killers, Stalin and Hitler, who murdered 60 million in concentration camps and war, fully chiseled the vicious black heart and soul of the 21st century's premier tyrant and mass civilian murdering war criminal. Now the world's enormous, if only hope is your lawful world peace treaty that will quite directly bloom 20 billion loving hearts and lives. Just as one war always begat 1,000 hateful more, so your peace will enshrine God's love, and everyone's happiness on the earth will save. My book is hope and work for your family as we reduce and end war to battle environmental death instead. My next radio story kills all hope for thousands of ruined Gaza families, including one Palestinian whose life revolved around his 20 blood and marriage relatives, until the couple of weeks when Benjamin Netanyahu dropped enough American bombs on civilian apartment buildings to kill all 20 of his loved ones. The lone survivor doesn't know why he hangs on to life. Most of his body is burned full thickness. Head to foot, he's full of inoperable shrapnel. The half of hospitals not bombed out of commission have no anesthetics, painkillers, or antibiotics for his agonizing, dangerous surgeries. Besides him, thousands of totally surgery-deprived face long infections and very early death or permanent disability while also grieving some, most, or all of their family dead. Death from thirst and starvation threaten them all more every week and month as Israel's total war on 2.3 million Gazans relentlessly escalates. Far more hate, power, and revenge against every guilty, evil non-combatant than the direct defense of an armed march through tunnels offering non-lethal capture of Hamas soldiers in return for the hostages motivates Mr. Netanyahu, equally soul-destroyed by intractable Jew-Palestinian decades of war. My last NPR report, global warming burns 3,700 fires in the Amazon rainforest no more today. Just the last 3 days of smoke inhalation will kill millions prematurely. unless thirst, starvation, or nuclear war get 'em first. Every Amazon river, including the Amazon itself, is flat disappearing. Unless the drought-dying, no longer rainforest is watered by your treaty, a world of soon dead trees will quintuple CO2 emissions to turn every river and lake on Earth, not occasionally coastal flooded, into dried, cracked mud. Then, without swords into plowshares' new human technology freshwater supply, you and your kids will fast die of hunger and thirst. If violent, hyper-male genetic illness afflicted the first warrior and a number of the worst top sociopaths running attack empires ever since, then might my equally aberrant feminine nurture weirdness help inspire the end of human, or more accurately, decisively inhuman battle. That's entirely up to you, darling. Why haven't 1,000 wise women written "Matriarchy Must Save Us Again" books? Were they in thrall to the 50 billion men since 8000 BC who naturally did not, a single one, weigh in against patriarchy either? The far more consequential query is, when will a billion, both gender, humane psychology, normal folks make the laws to stop Murder Incorporated and their millions of captured, corrupted politicians from hammering our last few years to war and pollution doomsdays? Very soon, I passionately believe. Speech 60, and you ain't dumped me yet. On the other hand, suppose you listen in casual amusement to my bitter end, 70, get cracking for your little girl speeches, and still do nothing? Then I will question your heart, intelligence, ethics, purpose, courage, and family, including human family, responsibility. How do we define humanity, love, good, and our reason to be? Helping all to survive and thrive. The ball's in your court, sport.